Listen, I have been teaching combat techniques at the Galactic Military Academy for 17 cycles now, and I thought I had seen every disappointing species the universe had to offer. Spoiler alert, I was wrong, dead wrong, and the thing that proved me wrong, a human, a God's forsaken, fragile, soft-skinned human named Maya Torres who could barely lift the standard training weights on her first day. My name is Vekroth Kane, and before you ask, yes, that Vekroth Kane, 3-time champion of the Andromeda Sector combat trials, decorated war hero from the Krelnath conflict, and proud owner of 4 functioning hearts that have never not once failed me in battle. I have trained the finest warriors this side of the galactic core, Chromath berserkers who could punch through starship hulls, silicate colossi who could bench press cargo shuttles, vent assassins so fast they could dodge particle beams. My students do not fail. They do not quit. They certainly do not show up looking like they would lose a fight against a stiff breeze. Then Maya Torres walked into my training facility. I will never forget that moment. She shuffled through the reinforced titanium doors, all 5 foot nothing of her, wearing the standard issue Academy combat suit that somehow still looked 3 sizes too big. Her arms were thin, barely any muscle definition. Her legs looked like they would snap if she attempted a proper combat stance. And her face, oh, her face had this nervous smile that screamed, I have made a terrible mistake, but it is too late to turn back now. The other recruits stopped their warm-up exercises to stare, and let me tell you, when a Chromath warrior stops mid-battle roar to gawk at something, you know it is either incredibly impressive or incredibly pathetic. This was the latter. Standing next to her was Borgath Thune, a Chromath male who stood 8 feet tall and had biceps thicker than Maya's entire torso. His green-scaled skin rippled with muscle that had been honed since childhood in 3 times standard gravity. He looked down at her, then looked at me, then back at her. His expression said everything his mouth did not need to. You cannot be serious. I was not serious. I did not want to be serious. But the Galactic Council, in their infinite wisdom and apparent brain damage, had decided that humans were ready for frontline military training. Humans. The species that needed pressurized environments to breathe. The species that died if their internal temperature fluctuated by more than a few degrees. The species that could be killed by their own planet's wildlife for crying out loud. But orders were orders, and Maya Torres was now my problem. I pulled up her file on my datapad while she nervously approached the check-in station. Born on Earth, naturally. 23 standard years old. Previous experience. Self-defense classes at something called a community center. Medical notes. Requires oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Temperature range strictly maintained between -5 and 40 degrees Celsius. Suffers from something called anxiety. Fantastic. Just fantastic. The physical assessment scores from her entrance exam were, and I am being generous here, laughable. Strength index, 42 out of a possible 1,000. Speed rating, 38. Endurance capacity, 51. For context, the average Chromath scored 600 in strength alone. The Vent speed demons regularly hit 900 in their agility tests. Even the Plenari, who were essentially sentient plants, scored better than this human. I called the group to attention. 25 recruits snapped into formation. Well, 24 snapped into formation. Maya sort of stumbled into place at the back, nearly tripping over her own feet. To her left stood Christia Vale, a silicate from the Obsidian Moons. 12 feet of living mineral, her body composed of interlocking crystalline plates that could shrug off small arms fire like rain. She did not have eyes in the traditional sense, but I swear I felt her giving Maya a look that translated to, "How are you even alive?" To Maya's right was Zik Sprint, a vent from the Quicksilver colonies. 6 feet tall, built like a whip, with reflective silver skin and muscles designed for explosive speed rather than raw strength. Vent could move so fast they became blurs to most species. Zik was tapping his foot impatiently, already bored, and the orientation had not even started yet. I cleared my throat, all 4 of my lungs working in harmony to project my voice across the training floor. No microphone needed. That is what superior biology gets you. Welcome to Advanced Combat Training, Cycle 479. I am Instructor Vekroth Kane, and for the next 6 months I will be transforming you from whatever you currently are, into warriors capable of serving in the Galactic Defense Force. Some of you will succeed. Most of you will wash out, and one of you, I glanced at Maya, who was already sweating despite the climate-controlled environment, will probably not survive the first week. The Chromath recruits laughed. The silicates rumbled with amusement. Even the vent cracked smiles. Maya just stood there, looking like she wanted to melt into the floor. I had no idea that 6 weeks later she would be doing exactly that. To the floor, I mean, not the melting part. Although honestly, that would have been less surprising than what actually happened. The first week of training was, in a word, painful. And I am not talking about the good kind of pain that builds character and forges warriors. I am talking about the excruciating second-hand embarrassment kind of pain that made me want to resign my commission and become a moisture farmer on some backwater planet where I would never have to witness such incompetence again. Day 1 started with basic strength assessment. Simple stuff. Lift the weighted bars. Complete the resistance circuits. Demonstrate your species' natural capabilities. Standard protocol that I had administered hundreds of times before. Borgath Thune went first. Naturally, he approached the lifting station, cracked his knuckles, which sounded like small explosions, and hoisted the 800-kilogram bar over his head with a roar that rattled the equipment racks. Perfect form. Textbook Chrometh display of power. He held it there for 30 seconds, barely straining, then dropped it with a thunderous clang that echoed through the facility. The other Chrometh recruits howled their approval. Even I nodded. Solid performance. Christia Vale went next. She did not bother with the bar. Instead, she walked directly to the compression chamber, a reinforced steel box designed to test raw crushing power. She stepped inside, braced her crystalline arms against the walls, and began to push. The pressure gauge climbed rapidly. 1,000 kilopascals, 2,000, 5,000. The metal groaned in protest. At 8,000 kilopascals, I called it. Excellent. The previous record had been 7,200. Then came Maya's turn. She approached the standard lifting bar, the one set at the minimum weight of 100 kilograms. For reference, that is the weight we use for children and injured personnel doing rehabilitation. She gripped the bar, took a deep breath that seemed to require significant effort, and pulled. The bar did not move. She adjusted her grip, planted her feet wider and tried again. The bar shifted slightly, maybe rose a centimeter off the rack, then dropped back down with a pathetic clink. I heard snickering from the Chromath section. Sprint was not even watching anymore. He had pulled out a data tablet and was reading something, clearly deciding that his time was better spent elsewhere. Maya, to her credit or perhaps her stupidity, tried a third time. She managed to lift the bar perhaps 5 centimeters before her arms started shaking violently. Her face turned an alarming shade of red. Sweat poured down her forehead. And then, with a gasp that sounded like a dying engine, she dropped the bar and staggered backward, nearly collapsing. 100 kilograms. She could barely lift 100 kilograms. Borgath could lift 8 times his own body weight. Maya could not even lift her own body weight off a bar. I made a note in my datapad. Human. Strength assessment. Catastrophic failure. Recommend immediate transfer to non-combat division. But the strength test was just the beginning of the horror show. Day 2 brought speed trials. The course was simple, a 400-meter sprint through an obstacle field, followed by agility maze that required quick direction changes and rapid reflexes. Most species completed it in under 40 seconds. Sprint, living up to his name, finished in 18.3 seconds. He moved so fast the tracking cameras could barely follow him. He was a silver blur, a ghost, completely untouchable. When he crossed the finish line, he was not even breathing hard. Show up. Maya started her run with what I can only describe as determination mixed with delusion. She took off at what was probably her maximum speed, which looked to me like a leisurely jog. She hit the first obstacle, a simple hurdle set at knee height for most species, and nearly face-planted trying to clear it. She stumbled through the agility maze like someone who had never seen corners before, and when she finally crossed the finish line, the timer read 2 minutes and 47 seconds. 2 minutes. 47 seconds. I have seen cargo haulers with better agility scores. The Venth recruits were openly laughing now. One of them, a female named Liz Flash, made a joke about whether Maya was moving in slow motion as some kind of tactical disadvantage to confuse enemies. The whole group erupted in laughter. Maya just bent over, hands on her knees, gasping for air like she had run a marathon instead of 400 meters. Day 3 was endurance testing. A simple 30-kilometer run on variable terrain at standard gravity, nothing fancy, just proof that you could keep moving when things got tough. Christia Vale, despite being made of literal rock, completed the course in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Her crystalline legs never stopped their steady grinding rhythm. Mechanical. Unstoppable. The Chromath finished in similar times, their massive lungs and efficient cardiovascular systems making the distance trivial. Maya made it 8 kilometers before she collapsed.
8
kilometers. The medical team had to retrieve her with a transport sled. She was dehydrated, her muscles were cramping, and she looked like death would have been a mercy. The medic, a plenary named Greenbark Sooth, gave me a report that used words like severely deconditioned and possibly unsuitable for physical training. No kidding. By day 5, the mockery had evolved from casual jokes to open contempt. Borgath started calling her Little Breaker, which was sarcasm so thick you could cut it with a plasma blade. It meant someone who breaks easily, not someone who breaks things. The vent gave her the nickname Slowpoke. Even Christia, who rarely spoke, referred to Maya as the soft one in her grinding crystalline voice. I tried to get her transferred out. I filed 3 separate requests with the Academy administration. 3 times they denied my request. Apparently, the Galactic Council had specifically mandated that all human recruits complete the full training cycle unless they voluntarily withdrew or suffered career-ending injuries. And here is the thing that made absolutely no sense to me. Maya did not quit. Every morning she showed up. Every test she failed, she tried again. When Borgath mocked her, she just nodded and kept going. When the speed trials left her gasping and humiliated, she asked what she could do better next time. When the endurance runs destroyed her, she came back the next day with bandaged feet and tried again. It was not bravery. It was insanity. I started wondering if humans had some kind of biological defect that prevented them from recognizing when they were utterly, completely outmatched. Maybe their brains lacked the self-preservation instinct that kept other species alive. Maybe they were just too stupid to understand basic mathematics. Because the math was simple. Maya Torres did not belong here. She would never belong here. And every day she stayed was another day of wasted resources and personal embarrassment. At least that is what I thought. Right up until week 6, when everything I knew about humans, about physics, and about my own competence as an instructor got thrown out the airlock. Week 6 began with standard combat drills. Finally, something I could look forward to. After 5 weeks of watching Maya Torres fail at literally everything, at least the sparring matches would be quick. Pair her up with someone, watch her get knocked down in 3 seconds, move on with my life. Simple, clean, merciful. The training arena was our pride and joy. Reinforced Durasteel floors rated for Class 9 impact resistance, energy-dampening walls that could absorb plasma blasts, and a ceiling high enough that even Silicate could practice their overhead strikes without worrying about structural damage. We had hosted exhibition matches with professional pit fighters here. The floor had taken hits from warhammers, plasma gauntlets, and one memorable incident involving a Thorian berserker with anger management issues. It had never, not once, shown even a scratch. I called out the pairings randomly. Well, mostly randomly. I will admit, I was feeling a bit vindictive after 5 weeks of paperwork explaining why my pass rate had dropped 20% since the human arrived. Borgath Thune, you are with Liz Flash. Christia Vale, you take on Zik Sprint. And Maya Torres. I paused for effect, watching her face go pale. You are sparring with Thalgren Ridge. The training floor went silent. Thalgren was not the biggest Chromath in the class. That honor belonged to Borgath. But Thalgren was mean. He stood 7.5 feet tall, had scales the color of dried blood, and had a reputation from his homeworld for breaking bones first and asking questions never. He was mid-tier in our rankings, sure, but mid-tier for a Chromath meant he could probably fight off a small army of most other species. Pairing him with Maya was not just unfair, it was cruel, and I did not care. Thalgren grinned, showing rows of serrated teeth. He cracked his neck, which sounded like a tree splitting in half. Then he lumbered toward the sparring circle, each footstep a small earthquake. Maya walked to the opposite side of the circle. She looked even smaller than usual next to the marked boundary line. Her combat suit, already too large, seemed to swallow her whole. She was not shaking, though. That was new. Usually by this point she would be visibly trembling. Instead, she just stood there, watching Thalgren with an expression I could not quite read. Maybe she had finally accepted her fate. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe humans just shut down when confronted with obviously superior opponents. I activated the sparring parameters on my datapad. Standard rules. First to incapacitate, force submission, or ring out wins. No lethal techniques. Not that Thalgren needed lethal techniques to destroy Maya. He could probably just breathe on her too hard, and she would fall over. Fighters ready, I called out, barely keeping the boredom from my voice. Thalgren dropped into a combat stance. Fists raised, weight distributed perfectly. Years of training evident in every muscle. Maya just stood there, feet together, arms at her sides, no stance whatsoever. Oh, for the love of, did she even remember the basic positioning we taught on day one? "Begin," I said, already preparing to call the medical team. Thalgren charged. Not his full speed, I noticed. Even he had enough restraint not to completely obliterate her in the first second. He closed the distance in 3 massive strides, pulled back his right fist, and launched a punch that was probably still moving slower than he was capable of, but would absolutely knock Maya into next week. And then Maya moved. I almost missed it. One moment she was standing still, the next she had pivoted to the side, let Thalgren's fist sail past her head with maybe 2 centimeters of clearance, and planted her right foot. What happened next took approximately 1.3 seconds. I know because I reviewed the security footage 78 times afterward and I still barely believe it. Maya's leg came up, not fast by vent standards but faster than any human had moved in the previous 5 weeks. Her hips rotated, her body torqued, and her foot, covered in the standard issue combat boot, connected with Thalgren's ribcage. The sound was wrong. That is the first thing I noticed. It was not the thud of flesh hitting scales. It was a crack, sharp and clean, like a gunshot. Thalgren's eyes went wide. His entire body, all 300 kilograms of muscle and bone and chromath superiority lifted off the ground. Actually lifted. He flew sideways, his trajectory horizontal, his arms flailing uselessly. And then he hit the reinforced Durasteel floor. That was when the second sound happened. The one that made my blood run cold. A crack. Deep, resonant, final. The kind of sound that Durasteel is not supposed to make. I looked down. The floor beneath where Maya had kicked, where her foot had planted, where all that force had transferred through her leg into the ground, had splintered. Actual cracks, radiating outward like a spider web. Each line a testament to physics that should not have been possible. Structural integrity alarms started blaring. Red warning lights flooded the arena. The automated safety systems kicked in, sealing off the section. Thalgren was not moving. He lay crumpled against the far wall, 10 meters from where the impact had occurred. His breathing shallow, his scales cracked along his entire right side. Maya just stood there in the center of the broken floor, her legs slowly lowering back to a resting position, her expression one of mild concern mixed with what I can only describe as guilt. "What?" she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the alarms. "Did I do it wrong?" "Wrong." She asked if she did it wrong. I could not speak. My primary and secondary brains were both struggling to process what I had just witnessed. My tertiary brain, the one that handles breathing and automatic functions, was the only reason I did not pass out. Around the arena, every single recruit stood frozen. Borgath's mouth hung open. Christia's crystalline body had gone completely still, not even her usual subtle vibrations. Zik had dropped his datapad, and he had not even looked up when Borgath had shattered a training dummy earlier that morning. The medical team rushed in, immediately attending to Thalgren. The engineering team was right behind them, scanning the floor damage with expressions of increasing alarm. And me? I just stared at Maya Torres, the weakest student in my class, standing in the center of a broken Durasteel floor, next to cracks that should not exist, having just launched a mid-tier chromath warrior like he was made of paper. One thought kept cycling through all 3 of my brains. What in the name of every god and every pantheon across every galaxy just happened? The chaos that followed was like nothing I had ever experienced in 17 cycles of teaching. The medical team had Thalgren on a hover stretcher within 90 seconds, their scanning equipment going absolutely berserk with readings. The engineering team swarmed the cracked floor like insects on a carcass, their devices beeping and chirping and generally making sounds that equipment should not make when everything is fine. And Maya just stood there, looking confused and worried, like she had accidentally broken someone's favorite mug instead of shattering reinforced Durasteel and hospitalizing a chromath warrior. I found my voice after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 seconds. "Everyone out, now. Except you." I pointed at Maya, who flinched. "You stay exactly where you are." The recruits filed out, casting backward glances that ranged from fear to awe to complete bewilderment. Borgath looked at Maya like she had grown a second head. Christia's retreat created small grinding sounds, her usual smooth movement replaced by something almost hesitant. Once the space had cleared except for the engineering and medical teams, I approached Maya slowly. Not because I was afraid of her. Understand, but because my legs were not entirely cooperating with my brain's instructions. All three of my brains actually. They were too busy trying to reconcile what I had just witnessed with everything I knew about physics, biology, and basic common sense. Chief Engineer Pollux Crane, a Mendari with 6 manipulator arms and a perpetually annoyed expression, was running a deep scan analyzer over the floor cracks. His facial membranes were flushed orange, which in Mendari body language meant extreme concern mixed with complete confusion. "Instructor came," he said without looking up, his translator converting his clicking speech into standard galactic. "This makes no sense. No sense whatsoever." "Explain," I demanded. "The Dure steel here is rated for 9,000 kilopascals of impact resistance. It has withstood direct strikes from Class 7 heavy weapons. I watched a Thorian warlord hit this exact spot with a graviton mole last cycle and it did not even dent." He gestured at the spiderweb of cracks spreading from where Maya had planted her foot. "This damage required at least 15,000 kilopascals of concentrated force. Minimum." I looked at Maya. She was maybe 60 kilograms soaking wet. The math did not math. "That is impossible," I said flatly. "Yes," Pollux agreed. "Yet here we are, staring at impossible cracks in an impossible floor caused by an impossibly weak species." From across the arena I heard the medical team leader, a Quilnari named Harmony Blend, shouting into her communicator. Her 4 eyes were wide, all of them focused on her medical scanner. "I need a trauma team to Arena 7 immediately. Multiple fractured ribs, collapsed lung, severe internal hemorrhaging, possible spinal trauma. Patient is a Chromath male, combat rated, and he was hit by something that registered as equivalent to a mid-grade explosive device." I walked over to her, my hearts, all 4 of them, hammering in my chest. "How bad?" I asked. Harmony looked up at me, her whiskers twitching with agitation. "If he had been any other species he would be dead. As it is, he will be in medical reconstruction for 3 weeks. Maybe 4. Whatever hit him delivered enough kinetic energy to punch through military-grade armor plating." "She kicked him," I said, the words feeling absurd even as I spoke them. "With what?" Harmony demanded. "A starship." "With her foot." Harmony's whiskers stopped twitching. All 4 of her eyes fixed on me with an expression that clearly said, "Have you lost your mind?" But she did not argue. She had seen the security footage feed. We all had. The arena's recording system captured everything in high definition, multi-angle coverage. There was no mystery about what had happened. The mystery was how. I turned back to Maya, who looked like she wanted to sink through the broken floor and disappear into the planet's core. "Explain," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Explain right now how you just did that." Maya's eyes darted around nervously. "I do not know. I just kicked him. Like I was taught. Like the basic striking techniques you showed us on day 3. You barely managed to dent the practice dummy on day 3. "I know." Her voice was small. "I was trying really hard not to break it. Not to break it. The dummy." She clarified. "They looked expensive." My primary brain shut down briefly. I felt it happen. Just a complete system reboot while it tried to process that statement. Pollux had abandoned the floor analysis and was now scanning Maya directly with 3 different devices simultaneously. His facial membranes were cycling through colors I had never seen before. "Instructor," he said slowly, "when was the last time someone checked this human's physiological baseline data?" "At intake," I said. "Standard Academy protocol." "Why?" "Because these readings are insane." He held up one of his scanners. "Her bone density is off the charts. Her muscle fiber composition is unlike anything in the database, and her cellular structure shows adaptation patterns consistent with extreme environmental stress conditioning." "She is from Earth," I said, as if that explained anything. "Yes," Pollux said. "And what is Earth's gravity rating?" I pulled up my datapad, accessing Maya's file. "Standard," I said. 1G baseline universal measurement. "Wrong." Pollux thrust one of his manipulator arms at my datapad. "Look at the actual planetary data, not the simplified version." I scrolled down past the basic information, into the detailed planetary specifications. Surface gravity, 9.807 meters per second squared. I stared at the number. Then I pulled up the Academy standard gravity setting for the training facility. No! Oh no! The Academy operated at 0.41 G standard galactic average, comfortable for most species, the baseline that 90% of spacefaring civilizations had evolved under. Earth's gravity was not 1 G by galactic standards. It was 2.39 G. Maya had spent her entire life training, living, existing in gravity that was more than twice what we considered normal. Every step she took on her homeworld, she was fighting against crushing force that would leave most species unable to stand. Every movement was resistance training, every day was strength conditioning. And for the past 6 weeks, she had been operating in less than half her normal gravity. I looked at Maya with new understanding and with growing horror. "You have been holding back," I said. It was not a question. Maya nodded miserably. "I was trying not to hurt anyone. Everyone here seems so fragile. I mean, on Earth we have gravity like this in swimming pools. Well, not exactly like this, but you know what I mean. And all the training equipment felt like it was made for children. So I figured I was just supposed to be really careful." "Careful," I repeated. "I broke a barbell on day 2, she continued. "The 100-kilogram one. I thought I was supposed to curl it, and it just snapped in half. So after that I made sure to only use like 10% effort on everything. Maybe 5%. 5%. I did not want to break your stuff," Maya said earnestly. "It all looked really expensive." Pollux was frantically calculating something on his data pad. "If her baseline is 2.39 G, and she has been operating at 0.41 G, that is a reduction of..." He paused, his membranes flushing bright purple. 82.8%. She is carrying 17.2% of her normal body weight. Her muscle output is effectively 5.8 times higher than her baseline performance. Harmony had abandoned Thalgrun, who was stable and being loaded onto a transport, and was now staring at Maya like she was a bomb that might go off. "She kicked a Chromath warrior with 5.8 times her trained striking power," Harmony said slowly, while trying to hold back so she would not hurt him. "Actually," Maya interjected quietly, "I was using maybe 30% that time. He looked tough and you said it was a real sparring match, so I thought it was okay to try a little harder. Was that wrong?" 30%. 30% of 5.8 times normal human capability. I did the math in my head, or tried to. My brains were not cooperating fully. If Maya had kicked Thalgren at full power at 100%, accounting for the gravity differential and her apparent bone density and muscle composition, she could have killed him, I said aloud. "If you had not held back, you would have killed him." Maya's face went white. "Oh no. Oh no. No. I am so sorry. Is he okay? Please tell me he is okay. I did not mean to hurt him that badly. I was trying to be gentle." Gentle. The human who had just hospitalized a Chromath warrior, shattered a reinforced durasteel floor, and apparently been operating at a tiny fraction of her actual capability for 6 weeks, was worried about being gentle. I sat down on the floor, ignoring the protests from the engineering team about disturbing their scanning area. My legs would not hold me anymore. "Every test," I said quietly. "Every failure. The strength assessment where you could not lift the bar. It felt like it was going to break if I pulled too hard," Maya confirmed. "The speed trial where you ran so slowly. I was scared I would trip and hurt someone if I ran at normal speed. The other students looked really delicate. The endurance run where you collapsed. I thought I was supposed to pace myself for your gravity. I did not know when to stop." Pollux was still running calculations. "According to this data, if we adjust the training parameters to account for her baseline gravity adaptation, Maya Torres does not rank at the bottom of the class." "Where does she rank?" I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. Pollux's facial membranes went completely white. "Top 3%, possibly top 1%. I need more data to be certain, but her actual performance metrics are competitive with elite Chromath warriors." I looked at Maya, still standing in the center of the broken floor, looking guilty and worried and completely unaware that she had just turned my entire understanding of human capability upside down. "Is anyone else from Earth like you?" I asked. Maya blinked. "What do you mean?"
"I mean, are all humans this strong?"
She laughed. It was a nervous sound. "Oh, no. I am actually pretty average back home. Maybe even below average. I never made varsity sports or anything. Below average. Below average for a species that had been living in 2.39 G their entire evolutionary history. I was going to need to file a report. A very long, very detailed report, and then I was probably going to need to speak with the Galactic Council about reclassifying humanity's threat assessment. But first, I needed to sit here on this broken floor and contemplate every decision I had made in the past 6 weeks. The emergency faculty meeting was called for 1800 hours, which gave me exactly 4 hours to review every single interaction I had with Maya Torres and realize with increasing dread that the signs had been there all along. I had just been too arrogant, too convinced of my own expertise to see them. I pulled up the security footage from week 1, their day 2 Maya, approaching the 100-kilogram barbell. I had logged it as user error when the bar snapped. Equipment malfunction, my report had said. Except the metallurgy team had found no defects. The bar had been torn in half by pure tensile force. Day 4. Maya running the speed trial. I had mocked her pace, called it a leisurely jog. But now, watching the footage again, I saw something else. Her feet barely touched the ground. Each step was controlled, careful, like someone walking on ice. Not because she was slow, because she was terrified of breaking through the floor. Week 3. The climbing wall exercise. Maya had refused to use the standard handholds, insisting on the larger reinforced grips designed for silicate students. I had assumed she was weak, that she needed more surface area. Now I realized she was afraid of ripping the regular holds right out of the wall. How many signs had I missed? How many times had Maya tried to tell me in her own way that something was wrong and I had dismissed it as human incompetence? The faculty meeting was held in Conference Room Alpha, which had been hastily upgraded with additional security protocols. Apparently, Command was worried about information leaking before they decided how to handle the situation. Present were myself, Pollux from engineering, Harmony from medical, and 6 other combat instructors who had humans in their training groups. Also present, via secure hologram, was Admiral Kess Thorne, Director of Academy Operations, whose expression suggested she had aged a decade in the past 4 hours. Gentlemen, ladies, and non-binary colleagues. Admiral Thorne began, her voice tight. We have a situation. Instructor Kane, please brief the group. I stood, my legs still slightly unsteady. At approximately 1300 hours today, a human student in my advanced combat class struck a Chromath warrior with sufficient force to hospitalize him and crack a Durasteel floor rated for Class 9 impacts. Investigation revealed that the human in question, Maya Torres, has been operating at approximately 5 to 30% of her actual capability since arriving at the academy. Instructor Grau Fist, a Chromath who taught close-quarters combat, slammed his hand on the table. Impossible. I have 3 humans in my class. They are weak. Pathetically weak. Are they? I asked. Or have they been careful not to break your equipment? Gravel Fist opened his mouth, then closed it. His expression shifted from anger to uncertainty to something approaching fear. Instructor Whisper Strike, Event 2 specialized in speed training, leaned forward. The human in my course. Marcus Webb. He runs the speed trials at exactly the same pace every single time. I assumed he had reached his maximum capability, but if he is regulating his output, he could be much faster, I finished. Possibly fast enough to compete with The room went silent. Harmony activated a holographic display showing medical scans. I have spent the past 3 hours analyzing human physiology data. Their bone density is approximately 1.7 times galactic average. Their muscle fiber composition includes something called fast-twitch fibers at ratios we typically only see in predator species. Their cardiovascular systems are designed for sustained output in high-gravity environments, and perhaps most concerning, they have redundant systems for almost everything. 2 kidneys, 2 lungs, a backup circulatory pump they call a heart, 2 of everything, Pollux added. Except their brain, which is single unit but has multiple specialized sections that can partially compensate if one area is damaged. They are built with failure redundancy as a baseline biological feature. Admiral Thorne cleared her throat. I have reports from 8 other Academy facilities. All of them have humans. All of them have reported similar incidents in the past week. A human in the demolitions course on Kepler Station accidentally crushed a plasma detonator with her bare hands. A human in flight school on Proxima Base broke the control stick off a training fighter. And a human in zero-G combat training at Luna Academy threw a sparring partner so hard he achieved escape velocity. Achieved what? I said faintly. The Mindari student is fine, Thorne continued. He was recovered by shuttle. But the human, one Jackson Rivera, apparently thought the zero-G environment meant he could push a little harder since there was no floor to damage. He was, and I quote, trying to be gentle. Trying to be gentle seemed to be a universal human concern. That should have been comforting. It was not. Instructor Whisper Strike's silver skin had gone dull, a sign of deep distress in vent. How did we miss this? How did the entire Galactic Council miss this? The humans have been spacefaring for over 30 cycles now. Because they have been accommodating us, Harmony said quietly. Think about it. Humans arrive on our stations, our ships, and immediately they are in lower gravity than their baseline. They probably thought it was normal, comfortable. They have been operating in what is essentially a low-resistance environment this entire time, and we assumed it was their natural state. I remembered something Maya had said and pulled up the audio recording from our post-incident interview. I played it for the room. Maya's voice, small and worried. I thought everyone here seemed fragile. On Earth we have gravity like this in swimming pools. Swimming pools, Gravel Fist repeated. They use our standard environmental gravity for recreation. Admiral Thorne rubbed her temples. We need to reclassify human combat ratings immediately. We also need to issue new training protocols, and we need to do both without causing galaxy-wide panic about the fact that we have apparently been underestimating humanity's military capability by a factor of approximately 6. What about the humans already in training? Instructor Whisperstrike asked. Do we tell them? They know, I said. Of course they know. They have been living in this gravity differential since they arrived. They have been carefully, deliberately holding back to avoid hurting us. The question is not whether we tell them. The question is whether we ask them to stop holding back. The room absorbed that statement in silence. Finally Pollock spoke. If we train them at their actual capability accounting for gravity adaptation and their biological specifications, where would they rank among galactic military forces? The calculations took 6 minutes. Pollux, Harmony and 2 other specialists worked together, factoring in bone density, muscle composition, cardiovascular capacity and the gravity differential. When they finished, Pollux's facial membranes were pure white. Top 0.05%, he said. Comparable to Chromath elites, possibly exceeding them in certain categories. And that is for average humans. We have not yet assessed what their peak performers are capable of. Admiral Thorne closed her eyes. Get me a direct line to the Galactic Council. And someone find out how many humans are currently serving in the fleet. I need to know if we have been deploying weapons-grade assets in non-combat roles because we thought they were fragile. The meeting adjourned shortly after. I walked back to the training facility in a daze, my thoughts a jumbled mess of recalculation and realization. 3 weeks later, I stood in the observation deck overlooking Advanced Training Arena 1. Below, Maya Torres, now properly classified and training at adjusted parameters, was sparring with Borgath Thune. Borgath, to his credit, had requested the rematch himself once Thalgrun had recovered. The fight was even. Actually even. Maya's strikes carried the force they were meant to carry. Her movements had speed she had been suppressing, and Borgath, one of the finest Chromath warriors I had ever trained, was struggling to keep up. She won with a sweep kick that sent Borgath sprawling, followed by a pin that he could not break. The other students, who had watched Maya's transformation from class weakling to apex combatant, erupted in cheers. Even Christia was rumbling with approval. Beside me, Admiral Thorne watched through the observation glass. You were right to flag her for advanced training. I was an idiot for not seeing what she was from the beginning, I corrected. You saw what everyone sees when they look at humans, Thorne said. Soft skin, no natural armor, no claws or fangs. They look weak, harmless, like they do not belong in a galaxy full of species that evolved with combat advantages built into their biology. But I said, understanding now. But they earned their place at the top of their planet's food chain for a reason, Thorne finished. They might not have scales or claws, but they have something else. Adaptability, endurance, and gravity so intense it turned them into walking tanks who think they are fragile. Below, Maya helped Borgath to his feet. He said something that made her laugh. They bumped fists, a human gesture that the Chromath had adopted. I had taught combat for 17 cycles. I had trained thousands of warriors. I thought I understood strength, capability and potential. Then a human walked into my facility, failed every test I gave her, and taught me the most important lesson of my career. Sometimes the weakest-looking beings are weak only because they choose to be, because they are kind, because they care more about not hurting you than they care about proving their strength. And when they stop holding back, when they show you what they are actually capable of, you realize that underestimating them was not just a mistake. It was the most dangerous assumption you could possibly make. Maya looked up at the observation deck. She could not see through the one-way glass, but somehow I felt like she knew I was watching. She smiled, waved, and turned back to help set up the next sparring match. I made a note in my datapad. Final assessment for Mayatores, graduated to elite combat instruction, recommendation for special operations consideration, threat level, reevaluate all previous assumptions about human capability. Then I added one more line, just for myself. Never ever assume weakness means incapable, especially not with humans.